My phone lit up as the plane touched down in Seattle. It wasn't the contract confirmation, it was a wedding photo. My sister, the bride, my fiancé, the groom, their caption, "Love can't wait," my mother's reply, "Proud of you both." They thought I was trapped in the air. They forgot that on the ground. I run risk control for a publicly traded corporation. I didn't text them. I just opened a new file. Operation Public. My name is Ava Calder. I am 32 years old, and my life has just been bifurcated into the time before my plane landed and the time after. The cabin of the Airbus A321 was pressurized and silent, that specific sterile quiet that follows the engines winding down. We had touched down at Grayford International at 11:02 p.m. The man next to me, smelling of stale coffee and duty-free cologne, had already unbuckled, eager to join the stampede. I sat still, waiting for the signal, waiting for the world to rush back in. At 11:08 p.m., it did. My phone, reconnecting to the network, didn't just vibrate, it detonated. A fusillade of notifications so rapid and violent it felt like the device was having a seizure on the tray table. A dozen texts, a flurry of alerts, and at the top, a Facebook photo tag. The image loaded before I could process the sender. It was professionally shot, light, airy, obnoxious in its contrived perfection. The location was the Glass Chapel at Westvale. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a cascade of white orchids and peonies. And in the center, two figures. The bride, radiant in a Vera Wang gown I recognized from a magazine, was Tessa Calder, my sister, my half-sister, to be precise, the daughter of my father's second marriage, the one who had always lived in my shadow and apparently decided to steal my light. The groom, his hand possessively on her waist, his smile broad and nauseatingly triumphant, was Mason Vale, my fiancé, the man whose socks were still in a drawer in my apartment, the man whose name was linked to mine on a catering deposit for next June. I stared at the name, Mason Vale. It was there, in crisp white digital font, right next to hers. The name that was supposed to be on my wedding invitations, the ones currently sitting in a proofing box at the stationer's. My blood didn't run cold. It evaporated. My lungs seized, pulling in the dry, filtered air of the cabin. Tessa, the girl who, just last week, had texted me from my own guest room, which she'd occupied for a month. "He's so perfect for you. Ava, you're so lucky. Just make sure you hold on to him tight for me, okay?" That winking emoji, I had read it as playful, sisterly. I see it now for what it was. A blueprint, a threat. Then the other notifications flooded in. The family group chat, grimly titled The Calders, had exploded. Aunt Carol. What a stunning surprise. Congratulations, Tessa and Mason. Cousin Mike. Wow, talk about moving fast. Congrats, you two. Emoji, champagne bottle, fireworks, heart. I scrolled through the deluge, my thumb numb. I was looking for a single text addressed to me, a WTF, a call me, anything. There was nothing, just congratulations. And then, a new message from my mother. Not a private text, a public declaration in the group chat, for all the aunts and cousins to see. So incredibly proud of you both, a truly magical day. Love can't wait. Love can't wait. The caption on their photo, a coordinated message. I sat there, frozen, as the passengers around me began to move, pulling bags from overhead bins. The ding of the unbuckled seatbelt sign was an assault. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother, directly to me. I clicked it, desperate for an explanation, for sanity. The text read, "Ava, I know you must have landed. I know this is a shock, but it all happened so fast, and they are so happy. Please, be gracious. Your sister deserves this. Be gracious." It wasn't a request. It was a command. It was the same command I'd heard my whole life. Be gracious when Tessa borrowed my prom dress and tore it. Be gracious when she forgot to pay her half of the rent. Be gracious, It was the family motto for Ava, absorb the damage. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I joined the line of shuffling passengers in the jet bridge. The air was stale. I could feel the gazes of the flight attendants, their plastic smiles. "Thank you for flying with us," one said. I nodded, unable to speak. As I walked through the terminal, the overhead announcement, flat and robotic, echoed. "Baggage for flight AS421 from Seattle is now arriving at Carousel 4. My bag, my black Toomey hardshell roller. Inside that suitcase, nestled between my laptop charger and my running shoes, wrapped in archival tissue paper, was the bodice of my Monique Louillier wedding dress, the real one, the one I had chosen. I had flown to Seattle specifically for this business trip, but I'd piggybacked a final alteration fitting with the designer's main West Coast atelier. They had the specific Belgian lace I'd requested. The weight of the bag, when I finally pulled it from the carousel, felt like an anchor. I was literally carrying the ghost of the life they had just murdered. My training kicked in. The part of me that was a sister and a fiancé was hemorrhaging on the floor of the baggage claim, but the other part of me, the head of ethics and risk for Norcrest Dynamics, was booting up. The panic receded, replaced by a glacial, methodical cold. My job is not about emotion. It is about documentation, sequence, and consequence. My thumb moved with a precision that felt detached from my shaking hands. First, screenshot, the Facebook post, the photo, the caption, the timestamp, 4:15 p.m., while I was in the air, incommunicado, descending toward Seattle. Second, screenshot, the comments, my mother's, "Proud of you both." Third, screenshot, the family group chat, the flood of congratulations, my mother's public injunction, "Be gracious, Ava," timestamp, 11:10 p.m. I opened my secure, encrypted work vault on my phone, the one I use for whistleblower reports and internal investigations. I created a new folder. I uploaded the images. I tagged them. Evidence Public Record A. My mind was clear now. The why was forming. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was timed. They didn't just elope. They coordinated an ambush. They waited until I was 30,000 feet in the air. Unable to intervene. Unable to even know. They wanted me neutralized. Why? I walked out into the humid night air of the passenger pickup curb, the smell of exhaust and concrete. I opened my laptop, balanced on my knee, using my phone as a hotspot. I didn't go to my personal email. I logged into the Norcrest Dynamics vendor portal. I typed in Mason's name, Mason Vale. His company, Northvale Procurement LLC, popped up, a small, hungry logistics firm he'd built from scratch, a firm I had been proud of him for. I clicked. There it was. Status, active bidder, finalist. Northvale Procurement was one of 3 companies in the final round of bidding for Project Titan, our new, exclusive $18 million supply chain contract. My division, Ethics and Risk, gives the final compliance sign-off on all major vendors. It's the last gate before the board vote, and that vote was scheduled for next Wednesday. I pulled up the file. I pulled up the disclosure forms Mason had signed 6 months ago, when the bidding process began. My fingers flew across the keypad. Section 4. Conflicts of Interest and Related Parties. Question 4.1. Are you, or do you have any close personal, romantic, or familial relationship with any director, officer, or employee of Norcrest Dynamics? His answer, signed and dated. Yes, I am the fiancé of Ava Calder, head of Ethics and Risk. He had disclosed, I had seen it, and as required by policy, I had immediately and formally recused myself from the entire Project Titan evaluation. The file was clean. My deputy, Mark, was handling the compliance check. But that was 6 months ago, when he was my fiancé. Today, he is not. I read the Norcrest corporate bylaws in my head. I didn't need to look them up. I wrote half of them. A familial relationship is defined as spouse, domestic partner, parent, child, or sibling. He was no longer my fiancé. He was now Legally, my brother-in-law. He had voided my recusal. He hadn't just switched fiancés, he had switched his conflict of interest category. By marrying my sister, he had created a new familial bond, one that wasn't covered by my previous recusal. He had reinserted me into the chain of command. They thought this was a brilliant move. They thought they had trapped me. They thought I would be forced to re-recuse myself. But this time, in a storm of humiliation and scandal, they thought I'd be too emotionally devastated, too busy crying over a shared apartment and a dead relationship, to function. They assumed I would take a leave of absence, leaving my deputy, a man Mason had been golfing with for a month, to sign off on the file. They thought I would be gracious. My phone buzzed. The town car was approaching. I saw the black Lincoln pull up. Frank, my driver for 5 years, got out, his face calm. "Good evening, Ms. Calder. Smooth flight?" It had some unexpected turbulence on the landing. Frank, he nodded, taking the Toomey roller, the one with the murdered dress, and placing it in the trunk. He held the door for me. I slid into the cool, dark leather of the back seat, the familiar smell of polished wood and Frank's faint coffee. It was the only sane thing in my world. "Home, Ms. Calder?" I looked at the glowing skyline of Grayford. Home, the apartment I shared with Mason. The apartment where my sister's clothes were probably now hanging in my closet. The locks were likely already changed. "No, Frank, change of plans." My voice was low, steady. It didn't even tremble. "Take me to the office, Norcrest Tower, and please, use the priority lane. It's an urgent matter." Frank, ever the professional, just touched his cap. "Yes, ma'am." The privacy divider slid up, sealing me in. The car merged onto the dark, empty highway. The city lights blurred into streaks of neon. My phone buzzed again, a text from Mason. "Ava, I know you've landed. We need to talk. This isn't what it looks like." This isn't what it looks like. It is precisely what it looks like. It's a photograph. It's a marriage certificate. It is contractual interference. Another buzz. Tessa. "Ava, please don't be mad. It just happened. We fell in love. We couldn't help it. It's real love. Ava, please just be happy for us." Real love. They are using words like love and happy. I looked at the vendor file glowing on my laptop screen. I am using words like procurement, disclosure, conflict of interest, collusion, and material fraud. They think this is a family drama. They think the weapons are tears and slammed doors and whispered accusations over Thanksgiving dinner. They think the battlefield is my heart. They are wrong. Beneath their rushed I-dos and their tacky champagne, I don't see a wedding. I see a data trail. I see wire transfers for the chapel, invoices for the rush job flowers, guest lists that I will cross-reference with the procurement committee. Their entire wedding isn't a celebration. It's an undeclared, multi-thousand-dollar corporate gift. It's leverage. My thumb hovered over the reply button. The urge to type, "You just voided your own contract. You idiot," was so strong it made my hand cramp. But I didn't. I won't. I silenced the notifications. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb. I leaned my head back against the cool headrest. The car was silent, save for the hum of the tires on the asphalt. "Don't text tonight," I whispered to my own reflection in the dark glass. This isn't a text message conversation. This is a board meeting. This is a deposition. I will not be gracious. I will be thorough. I will not speak in the family chat. I will speak in a place where everyone can hear, a place where the minutes are recorded, where testimony is binding, and where the cameras are always on. The Norcrest Tower loomed ahead, a column of dark glass and steel piercing the night sky. My battlefield. I opened the new file on my secure drive, the one I'd labeled Prelim Case E. I deleted the title. I typed a new one. Operation Public. The car slid into the empty, echoing corporate garage. The fluorescent lights hummed. It was 11:38 p.m. My workday was just beginning. The Norcrest Tower lobby at 11:45 p.m. is not a human space. It's an ideological statement. 4 stories of plate glass held in place by a skeleton of brushed steel. It's designed to awe, to intimidate, to reflect the sky and nothing else. The only light comes from the recessed, cold blue LEDs embedded in the white marble floor. The same shade as a gas flame, the same clinical chill as a surgical theater. It's a place designed to remind you that the individual is small, but the corporation is vast. Tonight, I am not small. My security badge, the one with my face and the title Ava Calder, head of ethics and risk, clicks against the turnstile. The light flashes green. A soft, electronic thwack grants me entry. The night guard, bored in his glass box, doesn't even look up. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. The elevator ride is silent. A pressurized ascent. 48 floors in 30 seconds. The doors open directly onto the risk control suite. The motion sensors detect me, and the lights fade up, but only to 20%. The vast open-plan office is a graveyard of ergonomic chairs and dark monitors. My office is in the corner, a glass box within a glass box, with a view of the entire sleeping city. I sit. The leather of my chair sighs. I don't turn on the overhead lights. The glow of my console is all I need. My login is biometric, a thumbprint, an iris scan, and a 24-character password. My position grants me what we call Level 1 admin privileges. I can see everything: the vendor system, the internal audit logs, the control journals, the email server. I am the digital panopticon. I am the firewall. My fingers move, muscle memory taking over where shock and adrenaline are still warring. I open the vendor management portal. I type Northvale Procurement LLC. The file flashes onto my main screen, registered in Delaware. Of course, a classic shell-friendly registration, capitalized with a bare minimum $100,000. But the bid package is slick. Mason is good at presentations. He's a finalist for Project Titan, our $18 million logistics overhaul, a company-making contract. I pull his initial disclosure forms, dated 6 months ago. I find the key signature, Section 4, Conflicts of Interest. His answer, typed and signed digitally. Yes, I am the fiancé of Ava Calder, head of ethics and risk. I find my corresponding memo, dated the same day. Per policy 3.11a, I am formally recusing myself from all evaluation, compliance review, and decision-making processes related to the Project Titan RFQ and all applicant vendors, due to a disclosed personal relationship with the principal of Northvale Procurement. It was clean. By the book, my deputy, Mark, was assigned the file. And this, I realize, is the genius of their move, or what they thought was genius. They didn't elope in secret despite the contract. They eloped because of it. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a corporate maneuver. They waited until the 11th hour, right before the final compliance review. They didn't just dump me. They reclassified their relationship to me. They voided my recusal by changing the terms. They weren't hiding their connection. They were laundering it. They created a new, public, familial bond. One that wasn't covered by my original recusal. They knew I would land, see the photos, and be emotionally obliterated. They pictured me calling in, hysterical, taking a compassionate leave of absence. They imagined the whispers. Ava Calder, poor thing, completely fell apart. Her sister, can you imagine? And in that vacuum, with me graciously out of the picture, my deputy, Mark, the one Mason has been playing golf with every Thursday for 6 weeks, would have a clear path. He would see my original recusal, assume the new brother-in-law status just amplified it, and sign off. The board would vote. The contract would be Mason's. They were using my integrity as a weapon against me. My mouth quirks in a smile that has no humor in it. They miscalculated. They assumed my primary identity was fiancé. They forgot my primary identity is auditor. I am not looking for loopholes. I am looking for clauses. I open the master contract file for Project Titan, all 212 pages of it. I run a search. Integrity. My cursor lands on Appendix C, Section 11.b, The integrity clause. It's boilerplate. The kind of thing lawyers put in that no one ever reads. No one but me. Norcrest Dynamics reserves the right to immediately disqualify any vendor applicant, without appeal, found to have engaged in willful misrepresentation, undisclosed control structures, or bad faith actions intended to subvert the ethics and disclosure process. This includes, but is not limited to, actions of marital fraud, collusion, or the establishment of new, undisclosed familial relationships for the purpose of obscuring or laundering a pre-existing conflict of interest. I read the sentence twice. Marital fraud. Laundering a pre-existing conflict. My God, it's like I wrote it for them. The marriage itself isn't the breach. The intent is, now I just have to prove it. I need to prove this love wasn't a sudden whirlwind. I need to prove it was a premeditated conspiracy. I minimize the portal. I open my personal secure archive, the one I back up from my phone. I scroll back. Tessa, my sister, an oversharer by nature. She can't have a cup of coffee without posting a picture of the foam art. I scroll. Back 1 week, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. There, an Instagram story. It was gone in 24 hours, but not before my phone automatically archived it. It's a mirror selfie. Tessa, making a kissy face. She's in a modern office, holding a mug. The caption, helping my guy with a big project. So proud. Boss babe making moves. At the time, I'd scrolled past it. I assumed my guy was some new bartender she was dating. I didn't care. I zoom in on the picture. My screen pixelates, then sharpens. Behind her, on the frosted glass of the conference room, is a corporate logo. It's backward in the mirror, but it's unmistakable. The stylized NV monogram of Northvale Procurement. She was at Mason's office a month ago. A month ago, Mason and I were having dinner with my parents, discussing seating charts. A month ago, his company was in the middle of the bidding process, and he was sleeping in my bed, and my sister was already at his office, calling him my guy. This wasn't an elopement. It was the closing move of an acquisition. I screenshot the story. I drag the file into the secure vault. I label it Evidence B Prior Undisclosed Relationship. I'm not done. A wedding, even a rush job, has witnesses. I go back to the Facebook post, the photo from the glass chapel at Westvale. It's public, set to world. They wanted me to see it. They wanted everyone to see it. They needed a public alibi for their love. I scan the comments, dozens of them, but I'm looking for the guest list. I click on the profiles of people tagging themselves at the event. Here with the happy couple. Such a beautiful secret ceremony. I cross-reference the names of the taggers with my own database, the Norcrest Employee Directory. No hits. Good. I cross-reference them with the Project Titan Committee roster, the 5 executives from procurement, logistics, and finance who hold the voting power. Ping. A name? Jonathan Harris, tagged by his wife, who wrote, "Congrats Mason and Tessa. Honored to be part of your special day." Jonathan Harris. He's the VP of Logistics. He is voting member number 3 on the Titan Committee. Ping. Another comment. This one on the main photo. Simply lovely. You two are a perfect match. The commenter is Sarah Albright, voting member number 4. 2 of the 5 voting members of the Procurement Committee were at the wedding. This is no longer a simple conflict of interest. This is a 5-alarm fire. This is collusion. This is potential bribery. What was their wedding gift? A yes vote? Did Mason pay for their travel? Their hotel rooms? The love story they just published is now material evidence in a multi-million-dollar procurement fraud investigation. My breath is steady. My hand is rock solid. I go back to the vendor management portal, to the Northvale file. My cursor hovers over the status, Final Review Pending. I right-click. A menu of options appears. Approve, reject, hold for review, flag. I click flag. A new dialog box opens. Reason for flag. I type, hold, potential fraud. I select the subcategories. Undisclosed conflict of interest, collusion, violation of integrity, Clause 11.bb, potential bribery of committee members. I hit enter. The file status instantly changes. A bright red banner now screams across the top. Hold. Active investigation. Do not proceed. Do not contact vendor. The system is now locked. No one can touch this file. Not my deputy, not the committee, not the CEO himself, not without my explicit override. And as per protocol, an automatic, high-priority alert has just been sent to the inbox of Norcrest's General Counsel and the chairman of the Audit Committee, notifying them that the head of risk has personally flagged an $18 million contract for potential fraud. The game is on. I lean back in my chair. The surgical blue light of the empty office reflects in my pupils. They thought this was a family drama. They thought the fight was about a white dress and a 3-tier cake. They thought the weapon was shame. They're wrong. The fight is about Article 11, Section B. The weapon is my access key. The wedding wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of their audit. The battle won't be fought in a living room with slammed doors. It will be fought in a glass-walled boardroom, and it will be fought in a court of law. I pick up my phone. 1:15 a.m. Dozens of missed calls. Mason, Tessa, my mother. I silence them all. My work here, for tonight, is done. I've laid the first mine. Now I just wait for them to take the next step. My office was a block of ice floating in the night sky. The hold I had placed on the Northvale file was a digital scream, an electronic tripwire that had already alerted the 2 most powerful lawyers in the company. But a flag is not a case. A flag is an accusation. Now, I needed the evidence. I needed the how. A betrayal of this magnitude is not a spontaneous event. It is a project. It requires planning, resources, and a timeline. My job was now to reverse engineer their project plan. I started where all things end, public records. It was 1:30 a.m. I bypassed the paywalled search engines and used my Level 1 access to the compliance databases that scrape county clerk records nationwide. Search jurisdiction, State of Grayford, record type, marriage, Party 1, Mason Vale, Party 2, Tessa Calder. The result populated in 0.4 seconds, a certificate from Norhaven County, the affluent, sleepy suburb where the glass chapel was located. Date of filing, October 23rd. Time, 11:04 a.m. I checked my calendar. My flight to Seattle departed at 10:15 a.m. They had filed the paperwork, the ink barely dry on their signatures. At the exact moment I was buckling my seatbelt. The timing was not just opportunistic, it was surgical. They waited until I was physically incapable of intervention. First, the legal structure. Next, the funding. A wedding at the Glass Chapel, even a spontaneous one, is not cheap. The orchids alone, the ones I saw in the photo, cost more than my first car. Where did the money come from? I couldn't subpoena Northvale's bank records. Not yet. I didn't need to. I had Mason's history. I went back to the Norcrest compliance archives. I searched for Mason Vale, not as a current bidder, but as a past one. My system chirped. A hit. File. Meridian Group bid. 2023. Vendor. Northvale. Procurement LLC. Status. Disqualified. I opened the file. It was a bid for a smaller logistics contract last year. Northvale had been the front-runner. Then, abruptly, they were terminated. I read the internal investigation notes that had been sealed by my predecessor. Reason for disqualification, violation of gift policy, Sec. 3B. Mason had tried to bribe the procurement manager, not with cash, but with a $5,000 Panerai watch. The manager reported it, and Mason was blacklisted, or he should have been. He'd been allowed to bid on Project Titan because the VP of procurement, Mason's golf buddy, had argued it was an isolated incident and a misunderstanding of policy. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a pattern. The Meridian file was a gift. It gave me his methodology. I saw how he structured the bribe, not from Northvale's main account, but routed through a separate, Seemingly unrelated intermediary LLC he controlled. LLC name, Vale Capital Holdings, his personal slush fund. I had my target. Now, I just needed to trace the money. I didn't have access to his bank accounts, but I had access to my employees, Jonathan Harris and Sarah Albright, the two committee members who attended the wedding. My hold flag gave me full authority to investigate the potential compromise of the Titan Committee. At 1:45 a.m., I initiated a Level 1 preservation order on the Norcrest email and calendar accounts for both Harris and Albright. They wouldn't know it was happening. It simply created a mirror of their data in my secure vault. I didn't search for wedding, I searched for Mason, Tessa, and Westvale. Sarah Albright's calendar was the first hit, an entry for yesterday, 4:00 p.m. Event. Private Client Appreciation Event, Westvale. Organizer, Mason Vale. Attendees, Sarah, Albright at Norcrest. Counselor, Jonathan, Harris, Norcrest. A client appreciation event. He was coding it. He was building his alibi. I pivoted to their email. I found the thread. It was an email from Mason's assistant at Northvale, sent 3 days ago to both Albright and Harris. Subject: Final details for Friday's event. Confidential. Body: Sarah and John. Mason is so looking forward to hosting you at Westvale. As discussed, this is a celebration of our successful partnership on the Titan project. He hadn't even won the contract yet, and he was celebrating a successful partnership. This was blatant, arrogant collusion. I scrolled down, past the polite replies, and there it was, an attachment. File: Westvale Event Itinerary, Confidential, PDF. My hand paused over the mouse. This was it, the unlocked door. I opened the PDF. It was an itinerary. 4:00 p.m. Vow ceremony at the Glass Chapel. 5:00 p.m. Cocktail reception, Palmetto Terrace. 6:00 p.m. Private dinner and Project Titan celebration. He had put it in writing. He had explicitly tied the wedding to the $18 million contract. But the real prize was at the bottom of the second page. His assistant, in a moment of catastrophic incompetence, hadn't just sent the itinerary. She had appended the banquet event order from the venue, the BEO, the master document. I scanned the line items: venue rental, Glass Chapel, $30,000. Floral, orchids, peonies, $22,000. PR and photography, radiant moments, $18,000. Champagne, Dom Perignon, 10 cases, $35,000. $1,000 guest lodging, 10 suites, 1 night, $15,000. This would be for the committee members and other VIPs. Total estimated charges, $120,000. And at the very bottom, the payment information. Client: Northvale Procurement LLC. Payment method: Amex Corporate Card. XXXXX905. Expense code: Internal 701. Client ENT. Client entertainment. He had paid for his entire wedding, his $120,000 elopement, on the Northvale corporate card and disguised it as a business expense. But why? It was his company. He could spend his money how he wanted. I knew why. A $120,000 client entertainment expense, tied directly to Project Titan, becomes a cost of goods sold. It's a tax write-off. He was planning to bill Norcrest, indirectly, for the cost of his own wedding, and by inviting the committee members, he'd turned them from wedding guests into co-conspirators in tax fraud. I saved the PDF. My heart was not racing. It was beating like a drum. Slow, steady, terminal. I looked for the ring. Outline point 3. This was harder. The BO didn't include the jeweler. I went back to the Meridian file, the Panerai watch he'd used as a bribe. Where did he buy it? The investigation notes listed the vendor. Da Vinci Jewelers. Mason was a creature of habit. I checked their Instagram. They were discreet, but proud. I scrolled back 3 weeks. There, A video, a 3-carat cushion-cut diamond, flawless, on a spinning pedestal. The caption, a truly special custom piece for a client who believes in grand gestures. She's a lucky lady. I recognized the setting. He had shown it to me on his phone months ago, asking what I thought. I'd told him it was beautiful. The video wasn't enough. I needed the payment. The Meridian file showed he routed that bribe through Vail Capital Holdings. I now had grounds to run that LLC against our internal vendor risk database. I typed it in. Status, red flag, high risk, prior sanctions activity. Our system already knew he was dirty. But then I saw a new transaction, logged just last week, a payment from Vail Capital Holdings to one of our own approved vendors. Recipient, Da Vinci Jewelers. They were in our system as a vendor for corporate retirement gifts. Amount, $45,000. Memo, deposit, custom order. He'd bought the ring with his slush fund, but to cover his tracks, he split the transaction. He paid the other $40,000 from a different account, one I couldn't see. He was trying to keep the purchase under the $50K suspicious activity report threshold. He wasn't just hiding it from me, he was hiding it from the IRS. The corporate case was airtight. Now, for the personal. I opened my phone, still buzzing angrily on the desk. Texts from Tessa. Ava, please answer me. You're scaring me. Don't do anything stupid. Ava. This is about love, not business. I ignored them. I opened my personal email. My chat history with Tessa on Signal and WhatsApp was gone. She had used the delete for everyone feature, wiping the record clean, a sloppy, amateur move. It screamed guilt, but she forgot the email. I searched my inbox. From Tessa. Called her. I found it. An email from 2 months ago. Subject, dress stress. Body, hey Ava. OMG, helping you with this is so fun. I'm trying to coordinate some accessory ideas for you. Can you remind me of your measurements again? And the style number of that Monique Louillier? Just want to check the swatches you liked online. Also, what's Mason's ring size again? He keeps forgetting and I want to get his wedding band ordered as a surprise sister gift. You're the best. XOXOT. At the time, I'd thought it was sweet, obliging. I had sent her my measurements. I had sent her my dress designer. I had sent her Mason's ring size. She wasn't helping. She was data mining. She was gathering the logistical details to steal my life. She used my own efficiency against me to plan her wedding. I saved the email as a PDF. The timeline was now complete. Establish pattern, Meridian breach. Begin conspiracy, Tessa at Northvale office, my guy. Gather intel. Tessa's email request for my dress size, his ring size. Secure assets, ring purchase, split payment. Execute, book venue, pay with corporate Amex, code as client entertainment. Neutralize threat, wait for my flight. Execute, file marriage license. Bribe collude, host committee members at the event. Control narrative, hire PR agency, release fairy tale story. It was a masterwork of corporate and romantic fraud. I opened the secure corporate vault, the one firewalled from the rest of the company, shared only with our general counsel. I created a new directory. I named it Vows and Vendor. I began uploading the files, one by one. A01, Marriage Cert Norhaven. PDF A02, Tessa Clash Calder email. Dress size. PDF B01, Northvale Amex BO Westvale. PDF B02, Committee Guest Confirmation. EML B03, Titan Celebration Itinerary. PDF C01, Meridian Breach File Pattern. PDF C02, Vail Capital Ring Transaction. Log D01, Radiant PR Press/Release. PDF. They thought a wedding needed a maid of honor and a best man. They thought the audience was their family. They were wrong. Every wedding is a contract, and this one had witnesses. The witnesses were the servers, the log files, the invoices, and the data. And I the auditor, was here to take their testimony. It was 3:00 a.m. I had my case. Now, I just had to decide where to hold the trial. The buzzing of my phone on the glass desk was the only sound in the office. 3:01 a.m. It was a dying animal, vibrating with the panicked calls and texts from Mason, from Tessa, from my mother. Ava, this is a misunderstanding. Ava, you're not answering. I'm getting scared. Ava, be gracious. Don't ruin this for your sister. I looked at the screen, at my mother's name. Don't ruin this. As if I were the storm, as if they were not the earthquake. I did not call my family. I did not text them. They had chosen a public forum for their announcement, and in doing so, had handed me jurisdiction. I silenced the phone. I turned it face down. The personal channel was closed. The professional one was about to open. My fingers flew. My first email was not to them. It was to the two people at Norcrest who mattered more than the CEO. To Robert Thorne at Norcrest, com, General Counsel, Maria Cheney at Norcrest, com, Chair, Audit Committee. Subject, Formal Notice of Investigation, Project Titan. RFQ, Vendor, Northvale Procurement, LLC, Show. Rob, Maria. Pursuant to my authority as Head of Ethics and Risk, at 01:45 this morning I placed an administrative hold, flag potential fraud, on the Project Titan vendor file for Northvale Procurement. The Vows and Vendor File, Vault 77A attached, contains preliminary evidence of a sophisticated, premeditated scheme to subvert the Norcrest bidding process. This includes, but is not limited to, material collusion with voting members of the Procurement Committee, J. Harris, S. Albright. Significant financial irregularities, including the miscoding of over $120,000 in non-permissible gifts as client entertainment, see attached, BEO. A bad faith marital fraud action, executed yesterday, designed to launder a pre-existing conflict of interest and circumvent my formal recusal. I am initiating a full, formal investigation, effective immediately. I require a meeting with legal and the full committee at the earliest possible opportunity. Ava Calder. I hit send. The whoosh sound echoed in the silent office. It was 3:05 a.m. The first domino had fallen. My next step was to build the arena. I opened the corporate calendar. I booked the Westbridge 14C boardroom. It was our largest, equipped with full audio-visual recording and teleconferencing. I scheduled the meeting for Monday at 10:00 a.m., 48 hours, just enough time for them to sweat. Meeting title, Mandatory, Vendor Ethics Review, Project Titan. Attendees, Robert Thorne, Legal, Maria Cheney, Audit, the entire 5-person Titan Committee. I deliberately included Harris and Albright. Let them walk into the room. Let them wonder what I knew. Then, I sent the invitations to the guests of honor. To Mason, Vale at Northvale Procurement, ComCC, Tessa, Calder at gmail.com, Robert, Thorne at Norcrest, com. Subject, Invitation to provide testimony. Norcrest Ethics Review. File, Northvale Procurement. Vale. A formal review of Northvale Procurement's bid for Project Titan has been convened for Monday, October 27th, at 10:00 a.m. in the Norcrest Tower, Boardroom 14C. The review has been called to address material discrepancies discovered in your firm's expense logging and potential non-compliance with the Norcrest Integrity Clause, App C. SEC 11.b, to which you are bound. As the principal of Northvale, your presence is requested to provide a formal response to these findings. Ms. Tessa Calder is also invited to attend, as her name appears on relevant documentation related to corporate expenditures under review. A guest pass will be waiting at reception. Regards, Ava Calder, Head of Ethics and Risk, Norcrest Dynamics. The formality was the poison. I wasn't an ex-fiancé. I was an auditor. I wasn't accusing them of betrayal. I was inviting them to explain an invoice. The corporate front was secure. Now, for the legal one. My company couldn't act on his bank accounts, but I, as a private citizen who had just been defrauded, could. I opened a secure message to my personal attorney, a man I kept on retainer for exactly this kind of scorched earth litigation. Subject: urgent. Ex parte injunction and civil claim. Michael, I need you to be at the courthouse when it opens at 9 a.m. I am sending you a file. I need an emergency ex parte injunction for a temporary restraining order, freezing all assets and expenditures coded Client Entertainment by the entity Northvale Procurement, LLC. The attached file, BEO Westvale, is an invoice for $120,000. It is for a wedding. The vendor is Northvale. The expense code is Client Entertainment. This is evidence of commingled funds and material fraud. I need you to lock that Amex account down before he can liquidate it. I also need you to draft a civil claim for fraudulent inducement, unjust enrichment, and tortious interference against both Mason Vale and Tessa Calder. I'm not asking for emotional damages. I'm asking for a full, punitive clawback of every dollar. Send me the drafts by 8 a.m. Now, the final internal escalation, the board. I drafted a new memo. This one was not a notice. It was a verdict. To the Board of Directors, Norcrest Dynamics. Subject: executive briefing. Critical risk. Project Titan vendor, Northvale Procurement, LLC. I summarized the vows and vendor file into 10 devastating bullet points. I laid out the timeline, the collusion, the Instagram story, the email from Tessa mining for my dress size, the miscoded wedding invoice, and the presence of 2 committee members at the ceremony. I explicitly named the action marital fraud and directly linked it to the integrity clause. I concluded, recommendation: immediate and permanent disqualification of Northvale Procurement from all current and future Norcrest contracts. Referral of findings to the District Attorney's Office for potential wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. I saved it as a draft. I would send it at 7 o'clock a.m., precisely when their morning alarms went off. The corporate and legal battlegrounds were set, but they had made their move on Facebook. They had chosen the public. They would now have to live in public. I opened my browser and went to the website for Morning Ledger, the city's highest-rated business news show. I knew the host, Julia Vance, from a Women in Risk panel 2 years ago. I sent an email to her producer. Subject: pitch. Exclusive. Why integrity clauses matter. Mark, Ava Calder. Here, I'm in the process of breaking a significant internal case at my firm involving procurement fraud. It is a textbook example of why integrity clauses are the most important and least understood tool in modern corporate governance. The methodology is incredible. It involves collusion, shadow expenses, and a fascinating, brazen attempt to use a personal relationship, even marital fraud, to subvert the bidding process. I can't name the companies yet, but I am free to discuss the process and why this kind of soft corruption is the new frontier of corporate risk. I can offer you a compelling, exclusive segment on how we catch them. I am available Monday morning. Let me know if Julia is interested in a story that isn't just about numbers, but about audacity. Best, Ava. I wasn't the jilted woman. I was the industry expert. I was not the victim. I was the authority. I was not reclaiming a man. He was a contaminated asset I was writing off. I was reclaiming the truth. With the trap set, I moved to defense. I opened my personal social media. The notifications were a dumpster fire. I went to Facebook. I found the wedding album. I untagged myself. I went to my profile settings. Limit past posts. Who can comment on your posts? Friends. I unfriended my mother and my sister. Then I changed the setting to only me. I went to Instagram. Settings. Privacy. Comments. Limit comments. From everyone. I did not delete a single thing. I simply locked the gates. From this moment on, the data would speak for itself. Finally, I opened a simple video editing program on my laptop. I didn't need anything fancy. I just needed a timeline. I dragged the files from my vows and vendor vault. Slide 1. A photo of Mason and me at last year's corporate gala. Text. Relationship disclosed. August 1st. Recusal filed. August 2nd. Slide 2. Tessa's Instagram story. From Mason's office. Timestamp. September 28th. Text. Undisclosed relationship. Slide 3. The wedding photo from the glass chapel. Timestamp. October 23rd, 4:15 p.m. Slide 4. A screenshot of my flight itinerary to Seattle. Landing time, October 23rd, 11:02 p.m. Text. While head of risk was in flight. Slide 5. The $120,000 BEO with the client entertainment code and Northvale procurement client name circled in bright red. Slide 6. The calendar invites for Harris and Albright. Title. Private Client Appreciation Event. Slide 7. The full text of Integrity Clause 11.e. I saved the file. Review timeline, MP4. This is what I would play in Boardroom 14C. It was 5:12 a.m. The sky was beginning to bruise with the first light of dawn. I had not slept. I had not cried. I had built a gallows. I picked up my phone. The screen still dark and silent. I set a single alarm. Monday, 9:00 a.m., the reveal was set. I picked up my briefcase, the one containing the bodice of my wedding dress, and walked out of the office just as the first cleaning crews were arriving. I was no longer a fiancé. I was a prosecutor. The clock on my desktop read 8:58 a.m. The sun was fully up, streaming through my office blinds, cutting the dark room into sharp, bright lines. I had not slept. I had not eaten. I had moved from the 48th floor war room to my home office, showered, and changed into what I called my hearing armor, a charcoal gray sheath dress, severe and structured. The digital world was quiet. The corporate and legal bombs I had set in the pre-dawn hours were ticking. At 9:00 a.m., the first one detonated. My personal lawyer, Michael, called. He's not the kind of lawyer who sends comforting emails. He's a former Southern District of New York prosecutor who views every case as a failure of his opponent. Ava, he said, his voice a low growl. I've reviewed the vault. Vows and vendor. It's the cleanest pre-litigation package I've seen in a decade. You've handed me a fully articulated skeleton. My job is just to put the skin on it. What's the first move, Michael? Not move. Moves, plural, he corrected. First, at 9:01 a.m., we filed the civil claim, Calder v. Vale and Calder. We're not suing for a broken heart. We are suing for fraudulent inducement, tortious interference, and unjust enrichment. This was the interpretation of the annulment for fraud I had discussed. I couldn't annul their marriage, but I could, and would, legally invalidate the premise of my own engagement. I want you to be clear on the language. Ava, Michael continued, the sound of papers rustling. We are arguing that your entire engagement was a fraud, that Mason Vale, with the active conspiracy of Tessa Calder, induced you into a relationship and the significant financial expenditures of a high-end wedding under false pretenses. Why? To maintain his clean conflict of interest status with Norcrest while he secured the Titan contract. His relationship with you was a business asset, and he liquidated it. We are asking for full restitution for every non-refundable deposit you made. The Lhuillier gown, the venue, the caterer, plus punitive damages for the conspiracy. Good, I said. What's next? Second, the ex parte motion for the temporary restraining order. I'm walking into the courthouse in 10 minutes to argue it. We are asking the judge for an emergency order to freeze all assets of Northvale Procurement LLC and Vale Capital Holdings. This was the pay-to-play mechanism, the $120,000 wedding, in our filing. We weren't calling it a wedding. We were calling it what it was, a bribe, a pay-to-play scheme where the pay was a lavish party and the play was the $18 million contract, gifted to the very committee members in attendance. But Michael, I said, they'll just delete everything. Which brings me to my third point, he said. The preservation order. This is the real knife. We are asking the judge to issue an immediate preservation order for all data on Mason Vale's and Tessa Calder's personal and corporate phones, iCloud accounts, and laptops. We are arguing they are an active spoliation risk. On what grounds? On the grounds that Tessa Calder already remotely deleted her entire chat history with you. She's already destroying evidence. The judge will see that. They won't be able to delete a text, an email, or a GPS log without violating a court order. When will we know? 2 hours, he hung up. The second explosion happened in my corporate inbox. 9:15 a.m., Robert Thorne, our general counsel, and Maria Cheney, the audit chair, were replying to my 3 a.m. memo. Meeting requested, your office, 10 minutes. They arrived at 9:25 a.m. Thorne looked like he'd seen a ghost. Maria, who had come up through forensic accounting, just looked furious. Ava, Thorne started, closing the glass door to my office. The bid, the Titan project, this is a catastrophe. No, Rob, I said, leaning back in my chair. The bid is a catastrophe. This is the control procedure. This is the system working. We're pausing the bid, Maria said, her voice sharp. She wasn't asking. The entire Project Titan RFQ is suspended. Effective immediately, all 5 members of the committee have been firewalled from the vendor files and put on administrative notice. Legal is taking custody of their laptops as we speak. We are opening a full internal investigation, led by my office and yours. This was exactly what I wanted. Good, I said. The hearing on Monday at 10 a.m. is already on the books. It will now be a formal investigatory hearing, not a review. I need a stenographer and a 3-camera setup. Full video record. Done, Thorne said. We'll be in the room. You'll lead the questioning. I held up my hand. No. They both stared at me. No, I repeated. As of 9:01 a.m. this morning, I am a plaintiff in a civil suit against Mason Vale and Tessa Calder. I am now a material party of interest to protect the integrity of this investigation. I cannot be the one making the final recommendation. I am formally recusing myself from all decision-making. Thorne looked confused. But you're the one who found it. I will attend as an observer, I said, choosing my words with surgical care. I will be the primary fact witness. I will present my findings. But the final recommendation to disqualify, that has to come from you, Rob, as general counsel, and from you, Maria, as head of audit. The evidence will speak for itself. I am just the translator. A wave of relief washed over Thorne's face. I wasn't a vigilante. I was a compliance professional. I was giving them the clean legal path. Understood, he said. That is exceptionally clean. Ava, we'll proceed on that basis. They left. The pieces were moving. At 11:30 a.m., the third detonation, this one was incoming, an email, flagged as external and urgent, landed in my inbox. From Martin Glass, Eska Glass and Adler. Subject, cease and desist. Defamation of North Vale Procurement, LLC and Mason Vale. Mason had been served, he'd lawyered up, and he'd hired a bully. The letter was 5 pages of boilerplate threats, malicious and baseless accusations, clear case of a jilted lover. Marital fraud is a fantastical and defamatory claim. You have inflicted severe and immediate reputational damage. We demand you retract your internal hold flag, rescind your fraudulent memos, and issue a formal apology to Mr. Vale and his new wife, Tessa Calder, within 24 hours, or we will pursue all available remedies for defamation, slander, and tortious interference. They were threatening me with tortious interference. The audacity was breathtaking. I didn't reply. I forwarded the email to Michael with one word: handle. 10 minutes later, Michael forwarded me his response to Martin Glass. Subject, your letter. Martin, see attached. It is the $120,000 banquet invoice for your client's wedding, which he explicitly coded as client entertainment and paid for with a corporate card. It is also the court order, signed by Judge Albright at 11:05 a.m., granting our ex parte motion. A 14-day freeze on all of North Vale's and Vale Capital's primary accounts is now in effect. Furthermore, a preservation order is now active for all your clients' electronic data. My client's accusations are now the basis of a civil suit and a corporate investigation. Your client's reputation is his own problem. The next time you contact my client, it will be to schedule a deposition. Stand down. I smiled. The 14-day freeze was on. The Amex was locked. Their data was trapped. They were in a box. But I needed one more piece, the human element. The BEO was a document. I needed the intent. I picked up my desk phone. I called the wedding agency. Radiant moments. I didn't ask for the event planner. I asked for the accounting department. Hi, this is Ava Calder, head of risk for Norcrest Dynamics. We're in the process of auditing a recent invoice from Northvale Procurement. Yes, for the event at the Glass Chapel. I'm looking at the BEO, and I see the expense code listed as 701 Client Entertainment. Can you just confirm on your end who authorized that specific code? It's a simple audit verification. There was a pause, a nervous clearing of a throat, a junior accountant. 1 second, ma'am. I heard clicking. Okay, I see it. Yes, Northvale. The client's assistant. Ms. Tessa Calder. I believe she was very specific. We normally code private events as PE, but she sent an email instructing us to use client entertainment specifically. She said it was critical for their internal books. I have the email. I can forward it to you? Please don't get us in trouble. We were just following instructions. Forward it, I said, my voice calm. You're not in trouble. You're being helpful. I hung up. 30 seconds later, the email appeared. From Tessa, calder@gmail.com. Subject, urgent, BO code. Hi Janine, per my conversation with Mason, you must code the entire event to 701 Client ENT. This is not a personal event. It's a client appreciation party. It is critical for our books that it's logged this way. Thanks. The smoking gun. The explicit, written instruction from my sister to commit fraud. I dragged the email into the vows and vendor vault and forwarded it to Thorne and Maria. File. E01. Fraudulent coding. Instruction. EML. It was done. The legal stitching was complete. The corporate armor was sealed. The civil weapons were loaded. It was 5 p.m. Friday, the weekend stretched before us. They had 65 hours until the 10:00 a.m. hearing on Monday. 65 hours, trapped with their frozen bank accounts, their subpoenaed phones, and the dawning, horrific realization of what I had done. I walked to the industrial printer. I pulled up the 212-page Project Titan master contract. I printed only one page, Appendix C, Section 11. Baiki, the Integrity Clause. I walked back to my desk, opened the drawer, and took out the heavy, old-fashioned rubber stamp and the red ink pad. I pressed the stamp into the ink, then slammed it down on the center of the page. The red letters, stark and wet, bled into the fiber of the paper. Violation. I pinned the single sheet of paper to the center of my wall. The battle map was drawn. Every legal line was sutured closed. I turned off the light, let them wait. The 14-day freeze order was a slow-acting neurotoxin. The effects were not immediate, but they were irreversible. By Saturday morning, 12 hours after Michael had filed the injunction, the paralysis had clearly set in. I was at my kitchen counter, drinking black coffee, staring at the blank wall, when my phone, silent for 10 straight hours, began to vibrate. My mother? I let it ring, the vibrations rattling on the cold quartz. Ring 1, ring 2, ring 3. On the 5th, I picked it up. Hello, I said. My voice was flat, rested. Ava, thank God. You're not answering. You're not answering your sister. You're not answering me. We've been sick with worry. I've been busy. You have to stop this, she said, her voice dropping the pretense of concern and adopting the sharp, accusatory tone I knew so well. "You're freezing their accounts? Mason's cards are being declined. They can't even pay for their hotel room. This is a family. Ava, you're trying to ruin your own sister." "I am not," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "I am enforcing a corporate integrity clause." "This isn't about a clause. This is about love. Love is complicated. Ava, it's messy. It doesn't follow rules." I put the mug down. "Love is complicated," I agreed. "But numbers are not. A $120,000 invoice is not. The IRS tax code for client entertainment is not. A conspiracy to bribe 2 voting members of a procurement committee is not. The numbers, Mother, are very, very simple. This isn't about numbers. This is about her happiness. She finally has what you've always had, and you can't stand it. Be supportive. Be the bigger person." "Be supportive" is not a legal defense for wire fraud. I said, "I have to go." I hung up before she could reply. The second wave came by a text. Tessa. She must have realized the phone calls weren't working. My phone lit up with a rapid-fire burst of blue bubbles. "Tessa. Ava. Answer me." "Tessa. You ruined everything. The hotel just kicked us out. The corporate Amex is frozen. We can't go on our honeymoon. We can't do anything." "Tessa. You're trying to destroy my life just because you're jealous." "Tessa. He loves me. Ava, not you. You can't force him to love you by suing him. This is sick." "Tessa. Please. I'm begging you. Call it off. Don't ruin my life. Please. I'm your sister." My thumb was steady. I opened the vows and vendor vault on my secure drive. I pulled up the file B01 Northvale Amex BO Westvale PDF. I screenshotted the final page, where the total, $120,000, was listed directly above the corporate card number and the fraudulent expense code. I texted her the image, nothing else. A bubble appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "Tessa. What is that?" "I don't understand. You're just sending me numbers." "Ava. It's the bill for your wedding." "Tessa. The one you instructed the vendor to code as client entertainment to hide it from the auditors. The one that constitutes conspiracy. Is this part of the love you're talking about? Or is this just the business part?" The typing bubble vanished and did not return. The third wave came from Mason. He was smarter. His lawyer, Martin Glass, had undoubtedly warned him about the preservation order. Texting was now a legal liability. He resorted to email. From Mason Vale. Subject, "We need to talk." "Ava, this has gone too far. This is insane. Your lawyer is a shark. My corporate accounts are frozen. This is not you. This is a private family matter, and you are dragging it into a boardroom. This is beneath you. Let's meet. Just you and me. My office. Tonight, we can talk this out. Like the 2 adults we are." He was trying to pull the fight off my chosen battlefield and back onto his. Back into the shadows. Into the he said, she said of a private room where he thought he still had influence. I hit reply all, making sure his lawyer, Martin Glass, and my lawyer, Michael, were both included on the thread. To Mason Vale. CC, Michael Kirsch, Martin Glass. Escar. Subject, Re. We need to talk. Mr. Vale, I'm glad you are eager to discuss this matter. My schedule is clear on Monday at 10:00 a.m. in Boardroom 14C of the Norcrest Tower, as my previous invitation stated. Our General Counsel, the Chair of the Audit Committee, and a court stenographer will all be present to hear your statement. I look forward to you talking this out in that forum. Your guest pass is confirmed. Regards, Ava Calder. Cornered, frozen, and silenced. They fell back on the only weapon they had left, the public narrative. On Saturday night, they reactivated the public Facebook wedding photo. They needed the world to see them as victims. Mason, in a desperate spin, added a new comment to his own post. It's sad that there will always be bitter people in the world who will try to tear down what they don't understand. But we found true love, and we will not apologize for it. That's all that matters. My family, a predictable chorus, chimed in. My Aunt Carol. So true. Mason, don't let the haters and jealous people get you down. True love always wins. My mother. Proud of you both for staying strong. They had forgotten that I hadn't blocked them. I still had the URL. I logged in. I scrolled past the fawning, ignorant replies, and I made my one and only public statement. I left a single comment on their True Love post. Congratulations. As this True Love was publicly expensed under Northvale's client entertainment budget, invoice 45-8B, and was attended by 2 voting members of the Titan Procurement Committee. It has triggered a full, formal audit for non-compliance with the Norcrest vendor gift policy, SEEK 3.B. True Love is usually off-budget. I logged out. The explosion was immediate. My phone lit up with notifications from the family group chat, which I had muted but not left. Aunt Carol. Ava, that was cruel and tacky. You're airing the family's dirty laundry. My mother. I am ashamed of you. You have destroyed this family for your own pride. Tessa. You're a monster, a cold, heartless monster. But my other family, the one at Norcrest, was also reacting on the secure internal Teams channel for the risk division. My deputy, Mark, sent a message. Mark, FYI, the vows and vendor file is already the stuff of legend. Audit is terrified of you. The entire legal department is calling it the Calder Protocol. A senior analyst from compliance, a woman I respected, sent me a private DM. It was a single clapping hands emoji. My family saw a betrayal. My colleagues saw a masterclass in governance. Tessa, realizing the fraud part was sticking, made one last, pathetic attempt. She called. I sent it to voicemail. The message she left was a masterpiece of panicked self-preservation. Ava, please. Her voice was high, laced with fake tears. I know you're angry about the dress. I know. I shouldn't have used your measurements. It was just easier. But I can fix it. That deposit you put down on the Monique Louillier, the one you can't get back? I know it was $10,000. Mason and we will split it with you, okay? We will give you half, $5,000. For you. Just call off the lawyers. Tell them it was all a mistake. Half the deposit. Ava, that's fair, right? Just call me back. I stared at the phone. Fair. She had stolen my fiancé, my wedding, my design, my measurements, and conspired to defraud my company, and she was now offering me $5,000 in hush money. I didn't reply. I downloaded the Popple WAV file of the voicemail. I forwarded it to Michael. Email. Michael, please add this to the civil claim under admission of guilt and attempted settlement. This is Defendant Calder offering to split the deposit for my gown, the one she used my measurements to order. Increase the punitive damages request by 50%. The wind had shifted. My single, surgical comment on their True Love post had worked. The local society blogs that had posted the fairy tale elopement story were now posting awkward updates. One read, an update on the Vale Calder wedding. Norcrest Dynamics has confirmed an active investigation into the vendor, Northvale Procurement, related to the wedding. Questions are being raised about the unusual financing of the event. We are no longer sure this is a fairy tale. The public pity I was supposed to be drowning in had curdled into suspicion. My phone lit up. A new DM on my locked Instagram. It was from Julia Vance, the host of Morning Ledger. Julia. Ava, read your pitch. My producer is lukewarm. This is explosive. Can you really deliver the goods on Monday? I'll bump the segment on EVs for it. You in? I looked at her message. I looked at the voicemail from Tessa offering me fairness. I looked at the email from Mason offering to talk like adults. They were all trying to negotiate. They thought this was a personal dispute, a transaction. They thought they could buy my silence with half a dress deposit. I DM'd Julia back. Ava, I'll be there, 7 a.m. And Julia, you'll want to pre-roll the segment title. Julia, oh, what's the title? Ava, We do not negotiate with invoices. Monday, 9:58 a.m. The Westbridge 14C boardroom was not a room, it was a theater of corporate power, a cold, tiered amphitheater with 2 levels. Designed for intimidation, the 5 voting members of the Titan Committee, including a very pale Jonathan Harris and a visibly trembling Sarah Albright, were seated on the upper tier, looking down. On the lower level, at the center of the polished oak crescent, sat General Counsel Robert Thorne and the chair of the Audit Committee. A court stenographer was positioned to the left, her fingers poised. 3 broadcast-quality cameras, one on the committee, one on the respondent's table, one on the council, were active. The red recording light was on. On the main 120-inch screen, the title card read, Vendor Ethics Review, Northvale Procurement. I was already seated, not at the main table. I was, as promised, in the observer's chair. Set 3 feet back, a fact witness. I had my files, my laptop, and a pitcher of ice water. At 10 o'clock a.m. on the dot, the heavy double doors at the back of the room swung open. Mason entered. He was wearing his best charcoal suit, the one he called his closing suit. His face was a tight mask of composure, but the skin under his eyes was puffy and gray. Beside him, looking small and enraged, was his lawyer, Martin Glass, briefcase in hand. And behind them, trailing like a ghost, was Tessa. It was a performance. She was wearing a cream white, off-the-shoulder dress, an echo of the wedding. It was a costume intended to scream innocence, bride, love. Her hair was down, her face pale. She was trying to look calm, but her eyes were wide, darting from the cameras to the committee members, refusing to land on me. She sat in the gallery row directly behind Mason, her hands clutched in her lap. Mr. Thorne, Glass said, sitting down. My clients are here, against my counsel, to show they have nothing to hide. Robert Thorne, our general counsel, leaned into his microphone. The sound was a low, amplified thump. The record will reflect that all parties are present. This hearing is now in session. This is a formal investigative review into anomalies and potential compliance breaches surrounding the bid for Project Titan by Northvale Procurement. This hearing is being recorded. Mr. Vale, you are here to provide testimony. Thorne nodded to the technician in the back. We will begin with a summary of the Compliance Division's findings. The title card on the main screen vanished. It was replaced by the video file I had created. Review Timeline, MP4. The room was plunged into a dead, pressurized silence, broken only by the hum of the HVAC. Slide 1. The photo of Mason and me at the Norcrest Gala. Text. Relationship disclosed. August 1st. Recusal. Filed. August 2nd. Slide 2. Tessa's Instagram story. The mirror selfie in Mason's office. Timestamp. September 28th. Text. Undisclosed relationship. Slide 3. The professional wedding photo from the Glass Chapel. Timestamp. October 23rd, 4:15 p.m. Slide 4. My flight itinerary. Landing time. October 23rd, 11:02 p.m. Text. While head of risk was in flight. Slide 5. The full-page scan of the $120,000 banquet invoice. The client, Northvale Procurement and Expense Code, 701 Client ENT were circled in pulsing red. Slide 6. The email thread. Invitation. Private Client Appreciation Event. Attendees. J. Harris. S. Albright. Subject. Project Titan Celebration. When the video ended, the screen went black, the lights in the room rose, but only to a dim clinical level. Mason was whispering furiously to Glass. Harris and Albright on the upper tier were staring at their empty notepads. Tessa had her hand over her mouth. Ms. Calder, Thorne's voice boomed. As head of risk, you compiled this initial data. Please provide your summary testimony. I stood. I walked to the lectern. I did not look at Mason. I did not look at Tessa. I addressed the committee. Members of the committee, Mr. Thorne, what you are reviewing is not a personal dispute. It is the audit trail of a multi-part procurement fraud. My voice was cold, amplified, and detached. Exhibit A, I said. The $120,000 BEO flashed onto the screen. A $120,000 payment for a wedding, routed through a corporate Amex and explicitly coded as client entertainment. This is not a clerical error. This is a material misrepresentation of funds. Exhibit B, the email from Tessa to the wedding agency's accounting department appeared. Must code the entire event to 701 client ENT. This is not a personal event. This is the conspiracy, I said. This is a non-employee, Ms. Tessa Calder, providing explicit written instruction to a third-party vendor to commit fraud, for the express purpose of disguising a personal expense from the auditors, my team. Exhibit C, the Project Titan celebration email to Harris and Albright. This is the collusion. This is the bribe. This is Mr. Vale celebrating the successful partnership of a contract he had not yet won. With the very people who were scheduled to vote on it, the $120,000 was not a wedding cost. It was a non-permissible, high-value gift intended to influence the outcome of the bid. I looked at the committee. This was a pay-to-play scheme. The payment was a party. The play was the $18 million contract. It is a textbook violation. I returned to my seat. The silence was heavy. Martin Glass shot to his feet. He was a performer. Mr. Thorne, members of the committee, this is an outrage. It's a fantasy. It's a narrative woven by a woman who has been professionally and personally scorned. He gestured at me. A woman using the full, terrifying power of her position to execute a personal vendetta. Mr. Glass, Thorne rumbled. Address the evidence. The evidence is circumstantial, Glass shouted, turning to the committee. My client fell in love. It was messy. It was fast. It was a coincidence. His fiancée was out of town, and he and her sister had a moment of profound, undeniable connection. Are we now to legislate love? He paced, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, reasonable tone. The wedding, the timing, it's all a coincidence. The invoice? A clerical error, made by an overeager assistant, Ms. Calder. In fact, in the chaos of a surprise elopement, the email to the committee? Exuberance, hope, not bribery. He stopped, turning to face me directly. This is a family tragedy, Ms. Calder, and you have dragged it under the fluorescent lights of a compliance hearing to destroy your ex-fiancé's reputation. It's a gross abuse of power, and it's that simple. He sat down, looking triumphant. I waited a beat, then I stood. A coincidence, I repeated. I nodded slowly. Mr. Glass is right. The timing is messy. Let's look at the timing. I nodded to the tech. Please bring up Exhibit D. The screen changed. It was Tessa's Instagram story. The mirror selfie, her, in Mason's office. The NV logo reflected in the glass behind her. The caption, helping my guy with a big project. So proud. Boss babe. Tessa, in the back row, let out a small, strangled sound. This photo, I said, my voice cutting through the room, was taken on September 28th, 4 weeks before the coincidence, 4 weeks before my flight. This is Ms. Calder, in Mr. Vale's office, referring to him as my guy. At this time, Mr. Vale was still my fiancé. We were actively discussing catering. I let the image hang in the air. This wasn't a whirlwind. This was a month-long conspiracy. This wasn't love. This was an intel-gathering operation. Glass started to stand up. This proves nothing. The chair of the audit committee, a sharp woman I deeply respected, cut him off. Her microphone clicked on. Mr. Glass, sit down. I have a question. Let's return to Exhibit B, the $120,000 invoice. She looked past the lawyer, her eyes pinning Mason to his chair. Mr. Vale, my team and I are very familiar with North Vale's internal controls. As submitted in your bid package, a $120,000 expenditure coded to client entertainment would require C-level sign-off. Your assistant, Ms. Calder, she could not have authorized this. A junior accountant could not have authorized this. Her voice became surgical. So, Mr. Vale, a simple question. Who at Northvale Procurement approved the 701 Client Entertainment Code for this $120,000 invoice? Who signed off on it? This was the kill shot. The room was silent. Mason was frozen. Camera 1 zoomed in on his face. His jaw was working, but no sound was coming out. He was trapped. If he said, "I did," he confessed to felony tax fraud and conspiracy. If he said, "Tessa did," he would be admitting his company has no internal controls and that he allows non-employees to direct his accounting. If he said, "I don't know," he would be admitting he is an incompetent CEO, unfit to manage an $18 million contract. Martin Glass shuffled his papers, looking for an answer that wasn't there. My client is the CEO. He cannot be expected to micromanage. These line items. It's a simple question, the audit chair repeated, her voice like ice. Who approved the code? Mason stared at the polished table. He looked at his hands. He said nothing. The silence stretched, pulling all the air from the room. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It was a breathtaking, agonizing void. He was a statue. I stood up. I took the single sheet of paper from my folder. I walked from my chair to the respondent's table. I placed it gently on the oak, directly in front of Mason. He flinched. It was the page from the contract. Appendix C, Section 11.de, the integrity clause. Stamped in the center, in ink so red it looked wet, was the one-word stamp, violation. Mason stared at it, his face ashen. Rob Thorne cleared his throat. The sound was like a gavel. The committee has seen the evidence of collusion. We have seen the evidence of material financial misrepresentation. We have seen the evidence of a bad faith action, time to circumvent this company's ethics protocols, and we have now seen the respondent's inability to answer a direct, material question. He looked at the committee, then at Mason. The recommendation from the General Counsel's Office and the Audit Committee is for the immediate and permanent disqualification of Northvale Procurement from the Project Titan bid and all future Norcrest contracts. We will be referring our complete findings, including the evidence of potential tax fraud and conspiracy, to the District Attorney's Office. It was done. Glass slumped in his chair. Defeated. From the back row, Tessa finally broke, a high, theatrical sob. "No, you can't!" But her cry was drowned out. A new sound, a digital pinging, fast and repetitive. On the main monitor, the internal employee live stream chat, which was being broadcast to the whole company, flickered to life in a sidebar. The feed exploded. Ping, 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 a waterfall of emojis, visible to the entire room, to the entire company, a flood of clapping hands, hundreds of them, from my team, from compliance, from analysts I'd never met. The digital applause was deafening. Camera 2, the wide shot, panned to capture the screen, recording the company's verdict. Camera 1 was on Mason, his face a mask of ruin. Camera 3 was on Tessa, her face buried in her hands, her white dress now looking like a shroud. I stood, alone, at the lectern. I did not look at Mason. I did not look at my sister. I turned my head, slowly, and looked directly into the lens of camera 1. The one with the small red light, the one recording the official record. I said nothing. My audit was complete. The Morning Ledger studio was the exact opposite of the Norcrest boardroom, where boardroom 14C was dark oak, cold steel, and recessed shadows. The studio was a bath of bright, warm light. It was painted in cheerful whites and broadcast yellows, designed to feel like a friendly kitchen. It was a performance space, and every element was calibrated for likability. I was not there to be likable. I was there to be clear. It was 7:05 a.m., less than 20 hours after the hearing. The internal Norcrest livestream of the Vendor Ethics Review had been leaked by an employee within an hour. The 30-second clip of my timeline, Mason's frozen silence, and the audit chair's recommendation had already been played on the 11 p.m. news. I wasn't just Ava Calder, I was now the Calder Protocol. Julia Vance, the host, was sharp, with a practiced empathy that could turn prosecutorial in an instant. She looked at me, her co-anchor, and then directly into camera 2. Welcome back to Morning Ledger. We've been covering the corporate shockwave from Norcrest Dynamics all morning. Our next guest is at the very center of that storm. She is Ava Calder, the head of ethics and risk at Norcrest. Ava, thank you for making time for us on what must be a difficult morning. I nodded. Thank you for having me, Julia. The chyron at the bottom of the screen was blunt. Love, money, and corporate ethics. Julia folded her hands. Ava, this is an extraordinary and explosive story. It involves an $18 million contract, allegations of fraud, and a very public, very personal component. Most people in your position would be on compassionate leave. They would be, in a word, silent. You're here. So let's start with the hardest question. How do you, as a risk professional, handle an investigation when the people involved are your own family? The studio was silent. I didn't pause. The answer was already loaded. The answer is simple, I said, my voice clear and amplified by the lavalier mic. You put the data before the story. A personal story is emotional. It's messy. It has multiple, conflicting versions. Data does not. An invoice, an expense code, a timestamp, a server log. These things are objective. They are verifiable. They do not have feelings. My job is not to interpret the story. My job is to follow the data. The names attached to that data are irrelevant. Julia nodded, impressed by the speed. Let's talk about that data. Yesterday, Norcrest Dynamics convened an internal ethics review. It was dramatic. We have obtained a 30-second clip from that hearing, which your company has authorized for public release in the interest of transparency. Let's take a look. The massive, high-definition screen behind us lit up. It was the clip. It wasn't shaky. It was the raw, high-quality feed from the boardroom. It showed the $120,000 banquet invoice, the client, Northvale Procurement, and expense code 701 Client ENT, circled in red. It split-screened to the email from Tessa. Must code. This is not a personal event. It is critical for our books. It cut to the audit chair's voice, cold and final. Evidence of collusion. Material misrepresentation. Recommend. Immediate and permanent disqualification. Refer findings to the district attorney's office. And it ended on the 10-second shot of Mason, frozen, unable to answer the question, as the violation stamp lay before him. The clip ended, the screen went black. The studio was dead quiet. Julia let the silence hang for a beat. That is damning, incontrovertible. Really, the individual who sent that email, the one instructing the vendor to commit fraud. We understand that is your sister, Tessa Calder, the woman who married your fiancé, and Julia paused, looking at her earpiece. My producers are telling me, Ms. Calder is actually here. She is in our studio audience. A gasp went through the studio. Keith, Julia said, her voice sharpening. Camera 3, in the back row. The red light on camera 3 lit up, and it swung away from the stage. The handheld operator, caught off guard, moved into the aisle. The camera panned, shaky, across the small audience of 40 people, and it found her. Tessa. She wasn't in a white dress. She was in a dark gray hoodie, the hood pulled halfway up. Her face was chalk white, puffy from crying, her eyes red and wide with panic. She had clearly followed me here, believing she could confront me in the parking lot, believing she could appeal to me personally, away from the lawyers. She had walked into the one place she could not hide. The camera zoomed in. She flinched, physically recoiling from the spotlight, raising a hand to block her face. The camera swung back to me. A perfect split screen was now on the monitor. Tessa, cowering in the shadows. Me, bathed in the bright, professional light of the stage. The entire city was watching, waiting for the confrontation, waiting for the tears, waiting for the family drama. Julia seized the moment. "Ms. Calder? Ava, your sister is right there. She's watching you. Do you have anything to say to her?" This was the pivot, the moment they were waiting for, the moment I would break, cry, or yell. I did not turn. I did not look at her. I kept my eyes locked on Julia, and on the lens of camera one. "I'm not here to discuss my sister," I said, my voice cutting through the expectant hush. "I am here to discuss the integrity of a system." I leaned forward, just slightly. "We are all bound by promises. We live in a world of contracts, spoken and written. A marriage is a promise. It's a vow. A corporate contract is also a promise. An integrity clause, like the one that was violated, is a promise to the shareholders, to the other employees, and to the public that the game will be fair. They are both vows." I held the camera's gaze. When a promise breaks, we don't get to ignore it because it's uncomfortable. We don't get to hide it because it's family. We fix it, wherever it breaks. We are ethically bound to repair the breach. Yesterday, my company repaired a breach. That is the end of the story. As I finished, my personal phone, sitting screen down on the table between us, gave a single, sharp BZT. I didn't flinch. I knew exactly what it was. It was 7:12 a.m. Michael. It was the 9 a.m. court docket notification. He had filed the extension, the 14-day freeze on Northvale's accounts, the one that was set to expire, had just been extended indefinitely pending the Daimwa's investigation. The wedding money, the honeymoon money, the operational funds, they were all gone, locked. Julia looked from me to the audience, then back. That is an incredibly powerful way to frame it. Repairing the breach, but some would call this cold. They would call it the Calder Protocol. I finished for her. I've seen the chatter. People want to call it revenge. It is not. Revenge is emotional. It is chaotic. This was the opposite. This was the precise, methodical, and unavoidable application of a control. This was governance. My work phone, in my bag, began its own silent vibration. I could see the screen light up through the fabric. A new email. Subject: Keynote Speaker Request 2026 Global Ethics Summit. A new email. Subject: Interview Request Forbes. A new email. Subject: Request for comment. Wharton Business Journal. A Google alert. The Grayford Gazette has taken down its article, A Fairy Tale Elopement, and issued a formal retraction. They wanted a fairy tale. I gave them a case study. Julia thinks I'm here to talk about a love triangle. The audience thinks this is a revenge story. They are all wrong. I didn't come here to tell the story of a broken heart. I came here to explain the process of stopping a systemic failure. You don't get applause for crying. You get respect for building a firewall that holds. I am not the victim. I am the auditor. Julia nodded, her professional veneer replaced by genuine respect. Ava Calder, thank you. Thank you for that lesson in clarity and integrity. The Morning Ledger theme music began to swell, the bright, synthesized horns signaling the commercial break. The floor director cued the applause sign for the studio audience. But the sound that started was not the polite, scattered clapping of a morning show. It started with one person in the front row, a woman in a business suit. She stood up, then 5 more, then the entire studio audience. They were on their feet. They were clapping. It was not polite. It was a standing ovation. It was a roar of approval, loud, sustained, and real. It was not for a woman who had been wronged. It was for a woman who had refused to be. The main camera, the one on the long hydraulic boom, swung in close for the final shot, the one they would use for the commercial bump. It captured my face, bathed in the hot, bright lights of the set, the shadows cast by them sharp and definitive. I did not smile. I did not look at Tessa. I just breathed. The repair was complete. The main atrium of the Norcrest Tower had been converted. The soaring, four-story glass lobby, usually a place of quiet, echoing transit, was now a packed, hostile theater. 100 members of the press, local news, national business journals, corporate law bloggers, were crammed behind a velvet rope line. The air was hot, and the bright white lights of the TV cameras burned away all the shadows. A long oak table stood before the massive, blue-glass Norcrest logo. At its center was a podium. Robert Thorne, our general counsel, stood at it. I was seated to his left, silent, my hands folded. Thorne leaned into the microphones. The thump echoed through the hall. "Good morning," he began, his voice grave. "We have concluded the internal investigation into the bidding process for Project Titan, first flagged by our ethics division. Our findings are decisive." The cameras whirred. After a thorough review, the audit committee has confirmed material breaches of the Norcrest Integrity Clause by the vendor, Northvale Procurement LLC. We found evidence of undisclosed conflicts, significant financial misrepresentation, and a conspiracy to provide non-permissible gifts to committee members. Thorne paused, letting the weight of the words land. As of 9:00 a.m. this morning, Norcrest Dynamics has formally and permanently disqualified Northvale Procurement from this and all future contracts. Furthermore, we have referred our complete investigatory file, including all evidence of potential wire fraud and tax evasion, to the District Attorney's Office for criminal review. A barrage of questions was shouted from the press line. Thorne ignored them. Our head of ethics and risk, Ms. Ava Calder, who led the initial discovery and served as the primary fact witness, will now make a brief, final statement. He nodded to me. The sound of my heels on the marble floor was the only sound in the atrium. Click, click, click. I reached the podium. The wall of flashing lights in front of me was blinding, a pulsing, white-hot void. I did not speak. Instead, I reached into the pocket of my charcoal gray dress. I took out a small, square, black velvet box. I placed it on the podium, directly over the microphones. The soft thud was amplified across the room. It was definitive. It was a gavel. The whirring of the cameras became a frantic, high-pitched scream. They knew what it was. I leaned forward. My voice was calm. This morning, I concluded a personal financial matter related to this case. I opened the box. The 3-carat cushion-cut diamond, the one purchased with the Vale Capital Slush Fund, was a contaminated asset. It flashed angrily under the hot lights, a symbol of the entire fraud. "This asset has been liquidated," I said. "Its proceeds, in the amount of $85,000, are being transferred in full." On cue, a woman stepped forward from the side of the stage. She was the dean of Grayford University's business school. I had arranged this 2 days ago. "The entire amount," I continued, "is being used to seed the new Norcrest Women in Auditing Scholarship Fund." I turned to the dean. She slid a large ceremonial donation form and a pen onto the podium. In front of the entire world, under the relentless gaze of the cameras, I signed my name, Ava Calder. I was not destroying the past. I was reallocating it. I was converting the symbol of his fraud into the funding for a generation of women who would be trained to catch men just like him. As I was signing, my personal phone, lying screen down on the podium, gave a single, sharp vibration. I glanced at the preview. An email from my lawyer, Michael. Subject: Win. Preliminary order granted. Body: Ava. The judge agrees. Full civil damages claim against both Vale and Calder has been preliminarily approved. They are liable. They are. The civil case was won. The money was secured. I finished my signature with a firm, black line. Thorne stepped forward. No further questions. "Ava!" The voice was a raw, broken shriek. It came from the back of the room. From behind the camera line, a commotion. A security guard was trying to hold someone back. "Ava, please!" "Tessa." She broke through the line, stumbling. her face a grotesque mask of tears and ruined makeup. Mason was right behind her, his face ashen, pulling at her arm. They hadn't been invited. They had come, a last, desperate, pathetic appeal. The cameras spun around, capturing her as she collapsed to her knees at the edge of the press barrier. "Ava, I'm sorry," she wailed, the sound echoing, raw and animalistic, in the cavernous room. "I'm sorry. I'll give it all back. I'll give him back. Please, just stop this. I'm sorry." The entire room, the entire city, was watching. This was the moment, the tears, the family drama, the confession. I looked at her on the floor, me on the podium. I leaned into the microphone. My voice was not angry, it was not triumphant, it was quiet, it was final. "The audit is complete." Tessa stopped, her mouth open, a sob caught in her throat. The words didn't compute. It wasn't the answer to her plea. It was the closing stamp on a file. Mason understood. He roared. It was a sound of pure, cornered rage. He lunged forward, pushing past the security guard who had grabbed Tessa. Vaulting the velvet rope, he was on the stage. He was at the podium. He grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my elbow. The grip painfully familiar. "Ava, stop," he hissed, his face inches from mine, his eyes wild with the realization that his life was over. "Stop the cameras. We can talk about this. Privately. Just talk to me. We can fix this." The press was going insane. Security was moving in, but I held up a hand. I did not pull. I did not flinch. I looked down at his hand, his fingers bruising my skin. Then I looked back at his eyes, and I took one, slow, deliberate step backward. His hand, still grasping, was left clutching the empty air between us. The cameras captured it all, the lunge, the desperate grip, the physical, undeniable chasm I had just created. The space was now infinite. He could never cross it again. "Mr. Vale!" Thorne's voice was thunder. Two large security guards took Mason by the arms. He didn't fight them. He was empty. He was a shell. Thorne, sensing the climax, stepped back to the podium to deliver the final brutal blow. "And one final announcement," he said, his voice cold with corporate fury as security dragged Mason and a sobbing Tessa back into the darkness. He read from a new statement. "Effective immediately, the Norcrest Board of Directors has ratified a new, permanent, zero-tolerance ban on all undisclosed romantic or familial relationships between any vendor and any employee across our global operations. Any such discovery will result in immediate disqualification and termination." He had given it a name. It wasn't the Calder Protocol anymore. It was just policy. My personal violation had been forged into a permanent, corporate firewall. Thorne finished. "Thank you." The sound that followed was not a question. It was not applause. It was an explosion. The sound of 100 high-speed camera shutters, all firing at once. Whir click, 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 whir click, flash, 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 flash. The flashbulbs were a blinding, violent strobe, turning the scene into a series of fractured, overexposed still frames. Me, at the podium, unblinking, Thorne, grim and powerful, the empty velvet box, and Mason and Tessa, just two dark, blurry shapes in the background, being swallowed by the shadows. The noise was deafening. It was the sound of phantoms. It was the sound of a new, hard line being drawn. It was the sound of a public execution. The high, bright, blinding peak. The climax was here, and I stood, perfectly still, at the white-hot center of it. I stepped back from the podium. The roar of the camera shutters was a physical, concussive force, a wall of white noise and blinding light. Robert Thorne was at my side, formally concluding the press conference, but the press was no longer listening. They were a feeding frenzy. I turned, not to the side stage, but back toward the main atrium doors. My path was a direct line, a 20-yard walk across the open marble. It would take me past the press line, past the security cordon, and past the two people at the center of the wreckage. They were still there, held by security. Mason was a hollowed-out man, his eyes vacant, his expensive closing suit now looking like a rental, rumpled and defeated. He was staring at the floor. Tessa saw me coming, her face, grotesque with smeared mascara and tears, snapped up. "Ava," she whispered. A raw, wet sound. She lunged, pulling against the security guard's grip. Her hand stretched out, fingers grasping. A beggar. "Ava, please, sis?" I did not break my stride. I did not slow down. I did not look at her. My gaze was fixed on the massive steel-framed glass doors at the far end of the lobby. I walked past her outstretched hand, my heels striking the stone. She was a ghost. She was a bad piece of data that had already been archived. Near the exit, a junior executive from the general counsel's office was waiting, as planned. He held a leather clipboard. The cameras were still rolling, tracking my every move. They zoomed in as I stopped. For just a moment. On the clipboard was a single-page document. Formal recusal from post-investigation oversight. It was a final piece of legal hygiene. A document confirming my work on this specific matter was over, ensuring the absolute, untouchable objectivity of the file I was handing over to the DA. I took the pen. I signed my name, Ava Calder. I handed the clipboard back. I turned toward the glass doors. My work phone, which I held in my left hand, vibrated once, a single, distinct buzz. I glanced at the screen. It was an automated email confirmation from the Grayford University bursar's office. Subject: confirmation of gift receipt. Norcrest Women in Auditing Scholarship Fund. $85,000. The asset was reallocated. The transfer was complete. I was at the threshold. The hot, chaotic noise of the atrium was behind me, the cool, quiet plaza just outside. I felt the unblinking eye of the last broadcast camera, the one holding the long, final shot. I stopped. I turned my head, just enough to look back, to find the small, glowing red light. I looked directly into it. I was looking into the eyes of the entire city. My mic was still live. "They chose public," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was carried. So did I. I turned my back. I pushed the heavy, chrome bar of the glass door. The door swung open, and the wall of noise from the atrium was instantly sliced off, replaced by the faint, ambient hum of the city. The door closed behind me with a deep, hydraulic whoosh. The glass was dark, reflecting the bright, silver towers of the city skyline. I was alone. There was no one to hug. There were no tears. There was nothing left to say. The file was closed. The case was closed. I walked toward my car. The only sound left in the world was the click, click, click of my heels on the granite plaza. Steady, even, and sure. A final image on the broadcast. The news ticker, crawling across the bottom of the black screen. Contract canceled. Investigation referred. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We're a global community, and I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from, and share your thoughts on Ava's final move. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and to really help us out, hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.